Alright, so let's talk about keeping these older machines and their controls running. Alright, there's different ways of going about it and different ways that certain manufacturers go about it. When I bought this lathe, I got it at an auction. It's a 2004 and I bought it in 2014, so it's about 10 years old. And at the time I got it, the control wasn't working and it had some other stuff that needed swapped out. So I went about and replaced the stuff that needed replaced. This control, I was hoping it wasn't going to cost too much to get it up and running, and luckily it didn't, because ProtoTrack has a rebuild and exchange program for their controls. And the way they do it is, if your control's not working, you have three different options, okay? You can either slide out the computer module, which is kind of like the guts of the control, and send that to them, and they send you a replacement that's already been rebuilt, and you slide that in, and that's got your computer, your control modules for all the axes and stuff. So that's got all the brains and everything in it, right? And just slide it out, slide in the new one, and they charged around $1,000 for that. Now if your screen's not working, or you've got, this isn't all up to par, then you can just buy this without the module, and you slide out the module and you slide it into your new housing, right? That's got the new screen and the new keypad and all that. And then your third option is if you just want to replace the whole thing. This comes out and you get the new housing and the new computer module, and you just plug in all your cables and you're up and going. Now, to get the housing is a little bit cheaper than getting the rebuilt computer module, and then to get both, is about what it would cost to get both of them individually, right? Now, just recently, which is why I'm making this video, the screen started malfunctioning on this control when I was powering it up. So the rebuilt one lasted me about 5 years, which is pretty good. Just paid $1,000 to have it rebuilt, and it lasted 5 years. So what happened was, when it was booting up, it would boot up with like oversized image, and you couldn't really see everything that was going on. It's kind of like it was super zoomed in, and then it had different colors and stuff, so it wasn't functioning properly. And so what I did was, I wanted to try and fix it myself to see if I could get it worked out. So I took it apart and looked at it in there, because sometimes some capacitors will blow out, and then you can just swap out the capacitors, you can be up and going. So that's what I did. I noticed on the main computer board in there that controls everything that it had some blown out capacitors, and then that also has a cable that goes to the screen. So it's like, all right, I'll just get this capacitor swapped out. Took it to a local computer place and had them swap out the capacitor, because I'm not good at that. I don't really do that all that often. I don't do it at all. And so they swapped out the capacitor, put the board back in, and put it back together, and I was like, all right, let's check this out, right? Well, I powered it up and it started smoking, right? It wasn't working, and it actually started smoking. So it's like, oh shit. Took it apart, and I noticed that the cable that goes from the board to the screen, I accidentally put it in backwards. You can put it in both ways, and it looks like I put it in backwards, and probably it had some power that went through there, and when I put it in backwards, it was sending power where it wasn't supposed to send power, and I think it fried some stuff. So I was like, well, I'll just get the rebuilt unit, and I went ahead and got the whole new module. And that was $1,700, and I'm not too bummed out about that because this new module came in and it looks really nice. It looks pretty much brand new from the outside. They even put on a new coat of paint and everything. And so I got my program swapped over. I got the calibration data from the old computer swapped in there and powered it up, and it's back up and going for $1,700. And hopefully it keeps going. So just reference, this is the old module. Now I'm gonna have to send this back to Prototrack for them to rebuild for somebody else. I'm not sure exactly how many components they're replacing there. If they just replace what needs to be replaced and diagnose and work on just what is wrong with it, or if they go ahead and do some preventative stuff and replace stuff that might eventually go bad. So I'm not sure exactly how deep they dig into it, but I know at least if you get the whole new unit, it looks new from the outside. So that's pretty cool. Now, Herco. I bought my Herco brand new in 2008, and it started having some control issues in 2016, so when it was about 8 years old. On it, they don't do a rebuild program like Prototrack, okay? They want to sell you new components and replace those components. And then on the Herco also, they didn't just want to replace what was bad. We wound up replacing the computer board, the back plane, the graphics card, and some other stuff. And on it, since I had a tech come out and work on it, and then I was replacing all these components with new components, the price tag on it was over $6,500 when it was all said and done. So it was a bigger sticker shock. I guess there's two ways of looking at it, okay? The new components, they're new, so they should last a good while, at least 8 more years, because the original one lasted 8 years. Rebuild unit might not last quite as long because it's a rebuilt unit, so some of the stuff in there is older. But then again, it's cheaper, right? So if you got to rebuild several times, then you're still come out cheaper, right? So what is it, 6,500 divided by 1,700, roughly about 4 times. So you get this rebuilt 3 times within 8 years. It's still cheaper than what I went through on that Herco. But then again, even keeping these machines up and running, it's cheaper to do that than it is to buy new machines, right? So yeah, sometimes you might be able to find the issue yourself and get it fixed. Like if I would have not plugged that cable in wrong, and I would have fixed it by just replacing that capacitor, that would have been $30. That would have been a pretty cheap fix. Manufacturers that offer rebuild programs, I love that. Definitely keeps the price tag down on keeping your machine up and running. Replacing it with new components like on the Herco, that can be good too, you know, because then you got new components and it's going to last a while. Now, here's the bummer part though. If you got an older machine that's not supported, like they won't sell you new components, or they don't have a rebuild program, right? You got a really old control, so it's way outdated. Then you're going to have to do a retrofit, right? Now retrofitting can get pretty expensive, and you're not really having like OEM stuff, you're having aftermarket control and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully you're not in a retrofit situation. But then again, if you got a machine and you can keep it running, especially if it's an expensive machine, you know, one of the larger machines, then the retrofitting can pay off. So yeah, sometimes people will get super bummed out when stuff quits working on their equipment, like their controls or some of the other electronics. But you got to understand that electronics, you know, they don't last as long as the machines themselves do. So you just got to look at it as one of the expenses that you're gonna encounter on these newer computer controlled machines. And it's still, if you look at how productive these machines are and how often you need to actually, and what you actually wind up paying keeping the electronics running, you're coming out ahead. It's like this lathe, when I bought it, it was just sitting in that facility not working because I didn't want to pay to fix it. And it's like, dude, pay $1,000 and you get your machine back up and running. One of these machines brand new costs over 40 G's, right? So why not get it back into service? And another great thing that I like is I've mainly just had to deal with Herco and Prototrack, and they've both been great to deal with. I can just call them up whenever I have an issue or a question, and they'll walk me through it and help me out at no charge. The only thing that I have to pay for really is for the parts. So if I need to order parts, I need to pay those, and I can order those parts usually straight from the manufacturer or through a reseller. And I typically deal with my local reseller, so the price is still the same whether I go through the manufacturer or the reseller. And I figure, hey, you know, why not support the local reseller? So I typically do that. It also gives me a little bit longer time to pay because they do net 30. I typically try and do pretty much mostly all my maintenance and upkeep on my machines myself because I'm a pretty good problem solver. And they charge $120 an hour, you know, to send a guy out and work on your equipment, which is kind of pricey. And so I'm like, you know, I can figure most of this stuff out. Might take me a little bit longer since I don't do it every day, but if I can figure it out and get it fixed and talk to the support people, have them help me out, get stuff back up and running myself, then I can save that save the cost of having a tech come out, you know. But sometimes I do run into situations where I can't figure something out, or you know, I need some extra help and they can't help me over the phone, and then they'll send the tech out. I only had a tech come out once, and that was on that Herco when they wanted to replace all those components. They had some procedures and stuff they wanted to go through, and some soldering to replace those components, so they sent a tech out. But one thing that's pretty cool is when you do your own maintenance on your equipment, you really get a feel for the machines. When you take the covers off and you look at all the internal components and you replace the bad servos and you clean everything out, and like on that Herco, when I was digging in there, I had to take the covers off one time, and I saw chips and stuff under those covers, and that made me realize that every so often you do need to bring those covers back and clean out all the chips, because those chips, a little bit of chips can make it past your covers and under there, and it just builds up over time. So definitely, you know, look under your covers every so often and clean those out. Well, I hope this was informative and you guys can keep your machines up and running, save a little bit of cash, and have a good one.